Okay. So hello everyone. Welcome and thank you for coming today. Today's IT talk won't be purely IT. We will talk about project management, which is a quite global, broad subject that can be applied to virtually any business domain that you can imagine. But obviously, since we are an IT company, we will concentrate on how we work as project managers in information technology, and particularly in DataArt. Now, traditionally, a couple of words about myself. My name is Stepan. I come from Ukraine. I've been living in Wrocław for 3 years now, almost 2 of them working with DataArt. I have entered information technology industry in 2003 as a computer science student. Then in 2007, I started working as a full-time developer. Somewhere in 2011, I decided that I was too lazy to continue writing code. So switched myself to a new direction, to another career path, becoming a project manager. So, having worked with several projects with different approaches, today I want to talk and to compare those different approaches to see how they can be applied, how they even can interact with each other, and probably to see which is better, particularly in our industry. And here is a brief overview of what I want to cover in my presentation. I will start with the very, very basics, just to create a kind of ground for further topics, for further subjects to discuss. I will start with a brief overview of PMI approach. That is, well, sort of a world-recognized standard in project management. Then we will overview well-known Waterfall model and Iterative Approach and, well, how they can be used. And that will gradually lead us to a discussion about lean and agile concepts. So, starting with the first point, PMI and PMBOK. And here's my very first question to you. I don't know, how many project managers do we have here? Can you raise a hand? Okay, cool, great. Then probably most of you know that PMI stands for Project Management Institute, non-profit organization which provides us with best practices and actually standards for project management, worldwide recognized. And the PMBOK is a document, primary document created by that organization, which stands for Project Management Body of Knowledge. And that actually defines what project management is. Why I have selected this topic for today? There is a general misconception that what's described by PMI is more or less always associated with waterfall model. I would like to show that it's not true, and that lean concepts and moreover agile methodologies live together with PMI, with what we have in PMI and PMBOK very well. So this is something that I want to cover in my first 3 points. Then we'll have a break, as already was said. And after that, what's probably more interesting, our colleague Marcin will give us a real-life story of how to transfer actually from waterfall to agile methods. Okay, now, basics. The very first question, and well, probably as many of you are professional project managers, probably it will be easy for you, but how do you define a project? Anyone raise a hand? What's a project? What do you think? Sorry?
The several definition of the project. Some people talk that if you have some task, if you group it, it's the project. For
No.
if you had if you want some results and you prepare some step, if the project, then if you look a lot of definition, you find. I think you have the another to us.
Well, I have a classic definition, maybe not even classic, but standardized by actually PMI and their document PMBOK. And generally, it gives an idea what we deal with. Now, to put it simple, project is time limited effort. It's a series of activities that we take in order to achieve some result. And what's also important, that the result is unique. It's something new. It's a change. I'll try to put it more clear with this big and scary table. There are two modes of activities in an organization. One is operations, which is actually performing day-to-day activities. They are repetitive. They don't produce actual outcome. Well, not actual, but they don't produce any unique and new outcome. On the other hand, project is something that always creates something new, something unique, or introduces a change. Another very important feature of project is that it's time-bound, so it has a defined completion date. Sometimes it's a strict deadline, sometimes it's a more or less planned, a projected date for a project to be completed, but the idea is that project can't last forever. It should end at some point. So we need to produce that unique and new outcome by some point in time, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Example of operations, well, classical example that has been given on project management trainings is, for example, accounting, right? It's a day-to-day operation when you, I don't know, calculate employees' salaries, build financial sheets, etc. So it's a day-to-day activity. It doesn't produce any change, any unique outcome. On the other hand, project produces something. And for example, if we speak about accounting, we can work on a software, on some software that automates accountants' work, or modify some software. Well, we probably know that there is a number of program software pieces that are created for accountants. So, project creates a unique outcome, and it's time-bound. These are two main features. Sorry?
Add to this definition,
yeah.
About the project, we should talk when it brings a kind of disruption. So we need to jump, because right now, while we all are from IT, so even if we consider operation means maintenance, means continuous improvement, there are still changes. So if we take that even in the IT department in every company, they are supposed to bring every day some small set of changes. So then project we can distinguish by the disruption. So the project brings something completely new. And that demands from us a big change of mindset. Yeah, then we can talk about project, because if you take ITIL is not exactly about projects. This is about operation, but ITIL is about change as well. So it's about a lot of small projects.
Well, yes.
And even I found the term maintenance project. What's that? Is that still business as usual, or it is already something new? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's absolutely a great point, and absolutely true. It all depends on how you look at it and what the scale of it is. So obviously there is probably, especially in information technology, there is no distinct boundary between these two. But, well, generally we usually speak about bigger, something bigger, some bigger activities that bring bigger change. Yeah, creating a new product or modifying, adding new features, serious, well, big features to an existing product. We speak about this project. So, but thank you very much. Yes, that's absolutely true. Now that we have this definition of a project, I would like to define actually a role of project management and the role of project manager. What project manager has to do to manage a project? Because creating something new and unique with a time bound, it can be challenging. It involves many processes, and it definitely needs management and coordination. And there are a number of tools that help us understand what needs to be done. I will now show a classical basic tool. It's an abstraction of a project triangle that introduces us to restrictions, constraints that we have with the project. I will do it very briefly because lots of you may know it, but it will create a basis for further talk. So, the three main constraints that we have with the project. One is scope. It's what we need to do. It's a functionality in terms of software. It's a functionality we need to implement. I put it in the bottom as a foundation because it's kind of probably we can say it's most important and most impacting constraint, because when it changes, everything else changes. Then we have time, obviously, because project, as we already said, is time-bound, so it's a constraint as well. And we perform work with hands of people, using their time, using equipment, and it all costs money. And of course, money is also not endless. There is a certain amount of money we are ready to pay, or the customer is ready to pay. So we are limited with that amount of money. Now, there are a couple of other parameters. Some people put quality inside the triangle, some people put risk. I'll put both because they are, I think, both quite important for managers. We need to deliver our result with a decent quality so that customer is satisfied, and we need to keep a careful eye on the risks that we have related to the project. Keeping in mind it's something new, challenging, and time-bound. So, having all this basic abstraction of a project, I would say the role of project manager is to work to maintain these constraints. What does it mean? I don't say to stay within these constraints because it's really difficult to keep them unchanged throughout the life cycle of a project. But if anything changes, most often scope changes because customer comes with some new ideas, with change requirements, etc. Then we need to react to this. We need to change our time constraint or cost constraint because it will be more expensive or it will take more time or both in many cases. So we as project managers have to maintain this and take proactive steps if something changes so that we stay within certain boundaries and so that they don't fall apart. There's another classical picture also from PMI approach, which depicts, it's also basic, depicts traditional project lifecycle, which is the stages through which, through the stages the project goes throughout its lifecycle. I'm showing this because going forward, I will try to project different approaches on this lifecycle and see and probably show that this lifecycle here is just a template. It's not a methodology. It's not, I would say, framework, probably not even an approach is just a representation of the stages of project lifecycle. It begins with initiating, where we do all the preparation for project starting. Planning, where we arrange items that we need to perform, work items, what we need to do, put it on a schedule, assign it to developers. Then we start executing, where we write code, actually. In parallel with that is monitoring and control, where we test our code, where we check status, gather for all those very useful meetings, etc. And then we, at some point when everything is implemented or when a deadline is reached, we close the project, which also contains some certain processes, like giving our output to customer, to operations, gathering best practices, etc. So closing the project. So this is a template that I would like to project approaches on. And the first approach, classical one, well, we consider as the classical one, a well-known waterfall model. Here is the template of our stages, and waterfall model projected on this template would look something like that. A number of stages through which project, our code, what we deliver goes. They, of course, they can be different from that. It's well, just an example. The main idea is that they go one after another, sequentially. Sorry, meaning that well, coding cannot start it before design, planning, and earlier stages are completed. Of course, many stages here, like design, coding, can take quite a significant amount of time. And what's bad about this approach? It does, well, it's very expensive to jump back in time, right? I mean that if there are any mistakes here in our design, for example, we will probably not know about them. There's a high probability that we will not know about them until we start testing. And since coding can take several months, and well, millions of dollars can be spent on it, it'll be way too expensive to come back to design stage to fix the mistakes. And that works virtually on any stage here. That is why to reduce this, mistakes, to reduce probability that such things happen, we switch to iterative approaches. The thing with iterative approaches is that they allow us to come back to previous stages at a relatively cheap price, let's say, low price. The main feature, I would say, of iterative approach is that it allows principle of trial and error. Meaning, well, we try something, we see whether it works or not. If not, we make adjustments, we try again. And we do it iteratively until it works. Having this said, I need to mention that waterfall approach, waterfall model still works very well in certain industries. For example, when you produce medical equipment or software for medical equipment, in most cases you can't afford trial and error approach because people's lives can depend on it. Because of a tiny error in a design or in a code of software in medical equipment can cost someone alive, and we cannot allow anyone to die for us just to try something. That's why in this case we need to thoroughly go through all of these stages, spend more money on that, spend more time on that, because really that risking with someone's life price is really higher. Same is applicable for space rockets production. You know, the price of a trial and error approach there will be that a space rocket would explode at a launch, And well, and they cost tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, so that's way too expensive. So in those industries, in those cases, waterfall model works very well. But we are now in information technology, and most projects that we deal with, fortunately, don't have those huge risks, meaning that they can afford iterative approach and can afford trying again and again, just to a certain extent, of course. Now, speaking about iterative approach, iterative life cycle is based on a concept that was proposed by two great professionals in quality control and management, William Deming and Walter Schuchart. And this is commonly known as Schuchart-Deming cycle, different names. And generally often is referred to as PDCA cycle, which stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act. These are the aliases of activities that we do within that cycle. So what does it look like? After initial planning, where we'll do all the preparation for project start, we start our iterations. Iteration starts with planning, which stands for P, plan, where we select what work items we will perform, we will complete in this iteration. After the plan is built, we start implementation, where we write code. And that is the do part of the cycle. Then the check part of the cycle is testing of the code produced. And based on the results of the tests, we make adjustments. That's the act part. So any adjustments that we might need to do to the process, to the requirements, to plans, to priorities, whatever. And when everything is done, we once again close the project. The project ends. That's, of course, very simplified picture, but it's pretty much gives the idea of iterative process that we have. However, this is also kind of high-level abstraction that doesn't give any particular tools, even probably ideas on how exactly to implement that and how put it to life. It doesn't have certain restrictions that would be good to have to more properly manage the project. And this is where the lean and agile concepts come into action. Now, I will first say a couple of words about lean. Lean itself is a huge topic that deserves a separate several days conference, I would say. Obviously, we don't have time for that, but I will say that lean is a product of Toyota Corporation. That's a way of thinking that they, so to say, invented. And this way of thinking concentrates only on the activities that bring value to the product that we develop, and cutting off everything that doesn't bring the value. So in Lean's terminology, it's called eliminating waste. So when we apply this to our industry, I would say that eliminating waste would be eliminating all of those endless meetings where we discuss some things, and instead of spending the time just discussing some abstract things, write code, produce a product. Of course, it's a kind of perfect world. We rarely have ability to do this 100%, but that's the idea. Now, agile, it's a management approach. Actually, it's a whole bunch of methodologies that help implement, promote, and apply lean way of thinking. And while lean is a way of thinking, right? It's a mindset. Agile gives us, to a certain extent, tools to bring that to life. And how it happens, I will now try to show it. I will start with also Toyota's invention, agile methodology called Kanban, which is strongly based on lean way of thinking. And it actually pretty much implements cutting waste, elimination of waste. So here is that, well, our template from PMI, our traditional project lifecycle, and now we put Kanban principles in it. So once again, we start initial planning, strategic analysis and everything, just preparation. And in terms of Kanban, in this stage, we usually produce a set of work items. There's a certain format that's used in an agile approach. Well, there is a set of formats that are different, but one of the formats is that we write work items on stickers, put them on a whiteboard, and that's how we form our set of requirements. That whiteboard can be virtual. In some software tool, like probably who is from IT, those know Jira, one of the most powerful instruments for that. We arrange them by priority, etc. And then after that planning, initial planning, we actually start the magic of Kanban. We use also a whiteboard, either virtual or real on the wall, to move those stickers that we created around. First, they go to to-do column, and while the team works, they move them across to in progress, testing, done stages. Well, these stages here are also just an example, and different teams can have different columns. But the idea is that Kanban actually introduces a restriction on the number of items that can be in a certain state simultaneously. So for example, we in a Kanban team can make an agreement that we can't have more than 2 items in progress simultaneously for different reasons. I don't know, we have only 2 developers. So one works on one item, one on another. And until the number of items here is 2 or less, less than 2, we can't move new items in progress. Same is for most of other columns. For example, we can't have more than 3 items in testing. Well, obviously we can have as many done items as we have done. So this way, by limiting in most cases it's called limiting work in progress, but you get the idea. It's limiting items so that we can handle them, so that we don't work on several items at a time that we can't handle. We just stay focused. We eliminate items that we're not work on right now, and this way we become more productive. That's how Kanban works. And once again, project closure, when everything's done. Now, while being quite nice approach, quite nice methodology, Kanban lacks certain directives, tools. For example, it lacks certain checkpoints in time where we, for example, release the product. We can move those items endlessly, and release management usually is done quite separately from that process. And this leads to sometimes not synchronous. Well, they are not aligned with each other. So initially we can never say when customer will see the ready product. Kanban just doesn't have these checkpoints. And here where the next agile approach comes into action, it's Scrum. Well, those of you who are familiar with Scrum may often hear that it's not methodology, it's a framework. Now it's a matter of a definition, but framework is, well, something that gives us a defined set of tools just to be taken and to be used, not to be interpreted, just to use them. Well, that's something that Scrum does. While using the same boards for moving items around, it introduces additional things that restrict us in certain cases in positive way. So just a very quick overview, because once again, many of you might know the principles, but the heart of a Scrum is sprint. Sprint is a restricted time period, usually 1 to 4 weeks, within which actually work is done, and in the end of which work and deliverable is given to stakeholders, to customers, whoever. And each sprint we do incremental. We increment in that work and functionality. Now, within that sprint, except moving all those items around, there are certain checkpoints. At the very beginning of a sprint is sprint planning, which is a meeting where we select items that we will do during the sprint, taking into account the length of the sprint and how many people we have, and team capacity. Then we start working. We have, every day we have meetings, which are called stand-ups. There's a, well, obviously they are not performed stand-up because of most teams are, well, located in different offices, but the idea is that these are 15 minutes daily meetings where we quickly sync on a status of where we stand in terms of progress. It's very short. Well, actually, Scrum is all about time boxing, which means that every event can last no longer than a defined period of time. In terms of daily stand-ups, it's standard for 15 minutes. In terms of sprint length, well, it's up to the team to decide, 1 to 4 weeks. So daily stand-ups are performed every day of a sprint from its beginning towards its end. Then at the end of the sprint, at the very last day of a sprint, we do a sprint review where we look at what we have done. We show the output to the stakeholders, and then decisions on the further plans are made. After that, we have a sprint retrospective where we, within team, discuss how the sprint went, what was done well, what was done not so well, how to improve, etc. So here we gather feedback from stakeholders. Here we gather feedback internally, and then adjust and repeat again. And this goes till project's end. So this way, by introducing these checkpoints, Scrum says to us, you don't need anything else. Well, obviously, if you need some on-demand meetings, go ahead and arrange them. But if you don't, these are the essential points needed for team to be efficient, to communicate effectively. And, well, in terms of Scrum, you don't need anything else. This way, waste is eliminated. We save time for coding, for producing real output, and we can do more, obviously. And once again, this template. Here, it's more general. It's generally about Agile, not only Scrum, but Scrum in particular. How it's projected on PMI project lifecycle. You can look at that on different levels. Global project level, from I don't know, getting what customer wants till the final delivery. Phase level, if a project is split into several sub-phases, pieces. This can be releases or some calendar phases, quarters, months, etc. And actually iteration level, which is in terms of Scrum is a sprint. On project level, in initiation and planning, we start with preparation, strategic analysis, etc. and initial planning, gathering what we need to do. Then executive monitoring and control and partially planning is all of those phases. In simplest case, those phases will be already iterations, sorry. But sometimes bigger projects can split into phases. And then obviously closure. Well, project retrospective to analyze and gather best practices and lessons learned, and closure. Then we go down to the phase level. If we have project divided into phases, we plan each phase to define what we are going to deliver in that phase. And we'll have the iterations, or sometimes even more granular phases, subphases. But in this case, sprints inside phase. And then a phase rollout. It can be, once again, a release, and retrospective of this particular phase. Then iteration level, what we have just reviewed. Sprint planning in the very beginning. Then daily work, where we do all of the stages: designing, coding, testing, repeating again, doing it much of that in parallel. And then sprint completion of sprint review and retrospective. And that's the picture of how Agile approach, and particularly Scrum, is projected on PMI template. Well, and that's essentially what I wanted to show, that PMI template, which is we consider it classic and which is strongly associated with Waterfall approach, is actually a template that can be associated with any methodology and approach. They're not in contradiction. They live together very well. And well, that's actually how it can be applicable in different situations for different projects. Now, to finish, once again, I will ask you to raise your hands. How many of you are familiar with Scrum? Well, great. Then obviously you should know that project manager is Scrum. No, Scrum doesn't recognize that role. There are only 3 roles: development team, the product owner, and the Scrum master. However, since the project is still a complex thing, requires coordination of many activities coming from different sides, some project management activities, let's say, are needed. And well, it's of course arguable, but I have a strong belief that project manager is somewhere here. It's either, well, in Scrum, development team is fully responsible to deliver increment throughout the sprint. Well, actually, is the ultimate responsibility of a project manager. So I would treat the development team as a collective mind, as a project manager. Or as an alternative, there can be a dedicated person who performs that role. But I think that project manager's place is here. There can be, of course, objections to that. I will be more than happy to discuss that with you. But now I think we run into the end of our time. And after a short break, we will have a real-time example, answering a very interesting question of how to move from heavy waterfall approach to flexible agile approach. And this will be presented by Marcin. Now, thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Show us the 3rd slide, please.
The third?
The 3rd slide of your presentation. That was a kind of... not this one, the next. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
This is, I believe, about PM book, yeah?
That's right.
About the book of knowledge. So if you have a look at this, this is Scrum, pure Scrum. So I'm very curious what brought you this idea that PMI is a kind of waterfallish. Look at this.
Yes.
There's
Well,
a circle on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I get your point. And actually, answering your question, I was not brought to that idea. I myself see that. And I see the
Yeah.
application of this, so to say, traditional life cycle to any other methodology. But on the other hand, I hear many people saying that PMBOK is too heavy, PMI approach is too hard to learn. Well, it's quite a thick book. Yeah, it's quite much to read, and they just associate with a heavy waterfall approach. There's a general misconception among many people that I saw, that I know. Well, I'm happy that you don't share this misconception, but generally, unfortunately, it exists.
Yeah, in general, the PM book is about areas of knowledge, so that are based on
That's right.
good practices, so they can be
That's right.
in charge in every approach. This is a kind of
course.
framework, actually. This is not a methodology, because
Of course.
that says about how do the things better. Of course, there is quite a lot of knowledge there, but yeah. In
Yeah.
Scrum, there is also something behind, more than only this nice picture with the cycle.
Of
So,
course.
and actually, Scrum is really methodology, because it says who, when, and what. There are very clearly defined roles, responsibilities, rituals, artifacts, and all the stuff need to be taken as a whole. There is no even saying that you may take a piece or not. You are only allowed to talk you are doing Scrum if you take it at whole, everything. Thank you.
I agree. Totally agree. Thank you. I think that they were first.
I just wanted to chime in on the previous question. The main difference between this approach and an iterative approach is that the feedback line goes back to planning. Because in Agile, when you do stuff, after a sprint, you do a retrospective, you go to the product people, they figure out what to do, and you replan the whole thing, and then you execute. In this thing, the monitoring control is whether things are going right or wrong, and if they are going wrong, then you make adjustments to get the project back on track, but you do not replan it. That's how it's constructed. Of course, we can argue whether PMI agrees with this or not, because PMI also has ACP, which is also Agile, but the key thing in Scrum is that you can replan every sprint if you need to do that. And in regular approaches and basically Waterfall, you do not do that. You have your design, you work for a year, and then you come back with something.
That's right.
And the monitoring control allows you just to keep on track, but it doesn't allow you to change the scope of the project.
Well, that's right. In terms of Scrum, what's even more important, you can replan and adjust and totally replan all the things based on stakeholders' feedback. That's probably the most important thing, because in Waterfall it's simply almost always not possible. So yes, that's right. Thank you. Yes.
I would like to ask your opinion about what you said for such risky projects that you consider to be only waterfall project, like medicine or space industry or something like this, rocket industry. From my opinion, even if a big project should be waterfall, but it can be divided on small sub-project that could use iterative approach, so prototyping, testing, kind of adjustment, test results to change requirements or something like this.
That's right. Obviously, yes, of course, and probably a good professional project manager would do exactly that thing. Yes, I don't see any issues with that. Probably in some projects it could be a bit challenging, but yeah, it's not impossible after all. Okay? No, yeah, sure.
Result. Okay.
We're recording,
Okay.
so
Okay. My question is, what does it mean to be a PM? Maybe we have a lot of kind of life cycles way to do our products, but what does it mean? What kind of skills the person should have for become PM? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's an awesome question, and I think the answer to this question would take several days. Because really it involves a number of skills of different types. Well, to me, first of all, being a PM is working with people. People on I don't like the term, but people on both sides, right? In my team, with people who do the work, and with people on the side of a customer who actually tell us what they need. Probably that's the most challenging thing, because people are different, of course, and there are lots of conflicts of interests. So, well, that's probably what it means to work with people, because it's because it's the most challenging thing.
Junior project manager or something like that, or sometimes we have 5 years experience the person should have.
Well,
Or it depends on team, or
I would say it really depends on a person, first of all. Well, because ultimately, really, what the team is depends on the PM. The project manager has a full responsibility for the project success, and if the team is not right, if team does something wrong, the responsibility is on the PM. PM has no right to go to, I don't know, to his top management and say that, I don't know, John has done the wrong thing, so the project failed. No, that's not right. Yeah, well, it's yeah. Ultimately, it's a teamwork, but in terms of project management, it was a responsibility of a project management to forecast that in several weeks John will do a wrong thing and the project will fail. I'm probably, I don't know, exaggerating this, but the idea is like that. Project manager must have skills of working with people, of defining who is good and who is bad to a certain extent, and see what's good for project, what's bad. So yes, unfortunately, we have to sometimes eliminate people from the team because they are too risky. So it's a kind of curious term, but yeah, that's the way it is. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, shall we start? Are we ready? You will take your coffee and go here. Thank you. Okay. So I supposed to stand here. It's not a matrix. Okay. It's because of the video. So we can start next part. Yeah, you can do. Shut the photo. Okay. And yeah, this is the title. It will be simple about real life story, an example of a transition from waterfall driven project to agile Scrum project. And yeah, maybe before we start about how I did it and what was the main challenge there, I will talk you about, the origins, why it happened. So by the end of 2016, working together with a delivery manager on a proposal, I've been asked, to help or rather to assist on the project, which currently has some small issues. And the delivery manager, he described that very high level. He said something, there's a small technical issue, it's performance related, and we are facing this issue now, and we are facing for quite long, so we need to fix it. You will just get into the project, you will fix it, and you are out. It's classical, it will be classical, firefighter squad. You go in, you fix it, and bravo, you go out, something like that. Should not take a long, blah, blah, blah. And plus he used, some kind of atomic arguments like, the technology stack, you've been in that project, and the most important, you've an architect, means you need to do so, yeah? And I thought, okay, good. Yeah, probably it was kind of, opportunity you cannot refuse, yeah? So, like in Godfather, an offer you cannot refuse, exactly. And so I pick it up, I accept to take it, and, just after 2 months, yeah, because of corporation gravity, I joined the project, and I joined it officially. And I joined it from the first daily meeting, and the party begins. So in the first daily, small group, 3, 4, 5 persons, including me, a long-term external collaborating with the client, start to argument to one of our colleagues. It was colleague from Warsaw, from India, and it was, it starts usual as a discussion, but it turns very fast into kind of, very nice situation. So he understood, he spoke a lot and asked the question, what still do you not understand? You've been here at the client location in Germany for a month and you still don't get it, you don't understand it. I have explained it to you, about 100 times, and you're still not getting it. I will repeat once again, and then you ask me, and ask me once again, and confirms that you understood. If you don't understood it, you must go to vacation. So it was, pretty nasty. And last but not least, this is goddamn stupid situation, yeah. And this is a fact because I've been there. This is not a story that has been told to me, and I'm repeating to you. I've been that meeting and I hear that in my ears. And then I realized and thought, okay, lucky me, yeah? Lucky me. And it was clear, that the main problem in this project is not in software at all. Not in software at all. And in general, the problem is definitely bigger, as it was explained to me. Okay. So not simply taking an offer as I start to work within the project. So yeah, I start from the first top one pain point, technical pain point, and just after a day or two, I just fix it. Was rather easy, piece of cake for me. Yeah. Then I start with next one, with next one, with next. I fix all of them, and then I realized that all of them, they have same reason, the same root cause why they did happen, and it again was not purely in the software. It was a poor specification. The project was conducted that time in waterfall model with many cascades, And before the implementation, there was at least 3 or 5 cascades, the levels of providing the documentation from very high level functional to classical functional to technical and to implementation. And then, the resource, the developer took the documentation and start to implement. So I realized, okay, because the documentation is poor according to the model, that issues appear. So what to do? Yeah, what to do? The real problem, exactly. So as I already knew that the main problem is specification, its quality. It's simply because it was poor, and moreover, because the project was over with the overrun, there was no time, money to go to the specification phase again. Not simply because lack of time, but because of we were already after the deadlines. So client was unhappy, because the deadline was not kept, and there was no money for that on our own client side. So the question is valid again, what to do? And then I simply realized that a natural and logical consequence of that situation, of those both facts, was a need to switch the way we conduct the project, the way we tick the project, to a multi-cascade waterfall, to a classical, not classical, to agile approach, to a flexible approach. And it was, as I said, logical to do so. The problem with that was, how to explain the client, partially from our fault, from the software house, and convince them they must go flexible now. The client. The client has some weakness. That client too, it was a kind of syndrome. I call it AS, not to be confused with classical AS. It's Agile-flavored syndrome. It's the client was a kind of worldwide company, headquartered in Germany, recognized also here in Poland, and they are till now known from they don't like conduct or project in Agile at all. It has its own history because several companies, not only our company or my previous company, tried to convince them, to push, to force them to do some project in Agile, though some of them project fail, some of the project were even not executed as it should be, because from Agile they took only daily stand-ups, that's all. So it was not Agile at all. And our company, we even tried to do in the past, and we forced the client to do so, and the project in which we did so was not our project anymore. We lose it because of that. So there was also no good chemistry on our side to do so. Pretty sad situation. You know what's the good for the project, but the client don't like it, and your delivery manager don't like it. So we must do, actually I must do, and I know Agile is good, but how to do it? How to convince both of the sides we need to do so, otherwise, we can close the door, shut the lights off. The remedy, So I was tricky that time and say, no, we'll not do Agile. We'll do iteratively, We'll do, stepwise. And as the project itself was kind of technical migration, not a lot changed in terms of functional requirements, we pick next artifact and start to work on them. And what was important was that each iteration brought some artifact, ready to use artifact at the production. It was not before, because of the waterfall conduction, way of conducting the project, in extremely long phases of the waterfall cascades, and the quantity of the volume of the quantity, the time to market was something around 8 to 12 months. So from the last discussion with the business, the people who actually need the software to ready software was more or less like a year. Very flexible, right? So we decide to deliver some artifact, very small artifact, within the first sprint, which was that time 3 weeks. And it was very good, because the first goal from the business side too was done. So we got the hack. Bing. And just after a few iterations, so client decides to, first of all, use Jira. Whoa. They decide to. I mean, we tried to influence do it before, but they said, no. Jira doesn't suit us. It's not for us. And after just few iterations, decide maybe we should, use not Excel only, but the Jira too. Yeah, it might be good for us. And they start on their own to use, Agile, naming the methodology and planning and structuring. So they have epics, they have stories, they have subtasks, task, sprint. Even they decide on their own to have a grooming at the end of sprints. Yeah, quite good. And believe me, it's the truth. The dailies, they became real daily meetings, not just project discussions. Yeah, so they really, shut or cut from 45 to 1 hour meetings to 15 or 20 meetings with classical round robin round, and everyone say what's to do, what's next. That's all. They became really daily meetings. And after just one phase, which consists of 3 or 4 sprints, the client itself, we doesn't force it to do so, continue to ask to the next phase. Yeah, get more people from us to the team, even those from Warsaw. It was banned previously. As I joined the team at the beginning, the project, all the colleagues from Warsaw, they were kicked out from the project. Yeah, because the client saw no Warsaw. Yeah, no means no usually. Yeah, they decide also to get more from iterative approach methodology. So they were eager. They were seeking. They were saying it's working for us. It's still not agile, yeah, because we don't like it, but it's working. Maybe we can have more from that cake. And they decide, ask us, maybe you have something more, like new framework, new methodology, what else we can do, and so on. They decide on their own, and it was not, again, our need or our ask, specify less. So they specify still more, but it was more like essence that is really needed for starting the development. And they decide to initiate the discussion. I don't know really what was the outcome, what was the result, how did they finish, but decide to talk about continuous integration and delivery. Wow. And semi-automated testing, yeah. Before previously, because previously they actually did not test a much. I would say very less, sometimes not all even, yeah. Why not? Yeah, and the most important fact from our company standpoint of view was the client was satisfied from that what we delivered to them together. Yeah, so the satisfaction was once again, and as I said, they ask for more. Simply, yeah, they ask for more. Means the team could grow up, and maybe you can, take over another responsibility, another domain, another that kind of technical project to conduct. And yeah, this was a kind of success story also for us. So, being short in words, the motto, the message to take away is simply go there, see what's the problem, and propose what should be proposed. In that case, it was agile. Questions?
In the beginning, you said the problem was poor specification, which usually is on the client side. And how did that change through the course of the project?
No, it was not at the client side. It's that usually, yes, but not in this project. In this project, it was split because they were in a waterfall model, when you have several cascades going from high-level functional specification to the cascade called development or programming, there was at least 4 or 5 phases. So some of them were under the suspicion, scope, in the scope of the client. Some of them were in our scope. But in general, as a whole, the documentation, it was, quite a long process. It took, in terms of time and budget, I guess 45% of the whole process, simply from the documentation. Fine, they've got very nice concept of model-driven design. So the whole structure, all the domains, they were designed as a model, not simple as a text or Excel, something like that. This was good. But as a result of that, you need to provide, next level of documentation, conceptual level, logical level, technical level, and so on. And that took too much time and caused the problem of the poor quality, yeah? Because the resources doing that and reviewing that were constantly changing. And the quality from high top level just melted till the software began to be implemented. And that was the reason, yeah. The simple guy from India, then he gets crap as a documentation and start to implement. And, you know, crap in, crap out. That's the rule, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you manage those backlog items so that the team
Mhm.
actually knew what was done? Because you're saying that the documentation wasn't done and people were changing along
Was
the
a poor
way,
quality, yeah.
and so on and so on. So at the end, as you have said, what goes in, that goes out.
Mhm.
So how did you change that? How did you feed the backlog items to the people? Because in most agile approaches, this is the core issue, because no one really cares about product owners, about reviews, about specification of what actually needs to be done. And that's where all agile initiatives fail, because business doesn't really own the
Mhm.
product they're trying to do. So
Yeah.
how did you manage that?
First of all, you take out what you really don't need or find personally or from the project perspective as a really useless. This documentation was it. The documentation. This project was the documentation. So I simply said, no, we don't specify anymore. We just fix what do we have, and by the next iteration, get the information, you know, from the top level, from the functional documentation, what is asked, and we go directly to the software. So we just skip all those phases, those cascades in Waterfall, yeah? I was in the position in the project of solution architect, so my scope of view and the position was not a classical developer. I have a broad view, so I can, you know, read fluent in German, translate it to the English on my own, and then go from high-level functional description to the software. I could still implement. Yep, hard to believe, but I can do, believe me. Yeah, and there was an opportunity to me, you know, to kind of, you know, compress on those phases, say, this is not needed. This is because, this is the root cause why you failed. Yeah? And if you cut it off, what you don't need, and take it out, maybe you will succeed. That was the reason. I simply took it out.
When you try to talk to the client who is scared of agile, did you use meaning we will use lean?
Well, good question. That time, you know, I was not so lean aware.
Because it's all you told it's about lean
Yes.
approach.
Yes, lean, as I guess, and Stepan, correct me if I'm wrong, is rather kind of, you know, mindset on the way of the high-level execution of the project. Still, you need a framework, yeah, the base, what you do, the actions, yeah, what you do with that. And this is the Scrum. I know the Scrum. I don't know lean much, so I took artifacts from Scrum, yeah, and I started to introduce them as they, you know, could be introduced, yeah. Let's say we start with Jira, then we start with structurization like epics, stories, and task to do for the developer. Simple, yeah, with very less description, only for the developer. That she knows what to implement, and then we do the first sprint and the first iteration. You know, do the testing, do the definition of done later, and brought the artifact to the production. Yeah, simply.
Yeah, another small question. Perhaps it's not about agile, but how have you resolved these conflicts in your team that you met first time?
The conflict, the situation,
Yeah.
the nasty situation. Not at all. I think it's there. Exactly, it's there. Not taking offense. Simply, yeah. I could now stand in the position and say to that guy, "Shut the fuck up! It's my colleague. You should not talk to him that way." Yeah, and you use your position, opportunity, because you know you are German-speaking resource. You're working to go close to client. He's from Warsaw. He's speaking English so only. But you know, I did not do so. Yeah, maybe I could, but I did not. And I said, okay, let's see what's the real problem. Yeah, I know that this guy's asshole. So I don't care. Yes and no. Yes and no. If I will, you know, react to that, you know, nasty situation, maybe it could go in different way, like yelling and, you know, then fighting. Then someone will say, "Stop! We close the project." The risk was there, and I said, "No. Let's see what's the problem." Yeah, I was called to that project, you know, exactly. Yeah. No, here. Yeah. Small technical issue. My delivery manager said, "You go in, you fix, you go out." And then I said, fuck, what's the situation in the project? What's to do? So I said, let's do what I'm supposed to do. And I fix it partially, yeah? And then I realized, okay, it was easy. It was very easy. So what's the problem? I'm not the master, yeah? I have also some weakness. And I said, with next, it was kind of confirmation. Aha! When, you know, all the technical issues that persist in the project quite long, I've been able to solve in just, you know, kind of days, not weeks, means they are easy. What was the reason for that? What was the root cause of that problems? Bang, specification, poor quality, poor specification. Why? Why?
I have a questions. In this project, you have some contract between the people, like the definition of ready, definition of done.
At the end.
At
Yep.
the end.
At the end, not at the beginning.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But when the people think that you must or want to create this agreement.
Well, a good question. Usually we start a project or classical agile project, you need to do at the beginning. Say, this is my definition of done for that kind of artifacts, and you need to provide it to keep the good quality. There are also acceptance criteria, and you need to, beside the definition of done, you need to define the definition of ready also, when it's ready, you know. And in my personal opinion, as soon as you will do it, as better. Yeah. In this project, it was a kind of different situation. It was not classical template. This is not, you know, example you can say we should convert Waterfall project to Agile project that way. Not at all. No. It's very good negative example. Yeah. It's a very good negative example. Yeah. And so even it was not in scope what I should do. Yeah. A small technical performance issue. You go in, you fix it, you out. That's the story. I've been explained about that only, yeah, and enjoy the project, and I realize, oh my God, that's not the problem, because, you know, I just fix it very, very, very fast, yeah. I just fix it very fast. I mean, after that point, yeah, if I wouldn't be myself, I could say, I have fixed them all. Dear delivery manager, please release me from the project. Ciao. And I out, yeah? Success story, Maybe next point to be promoted in next year, why not? Yeah? But I realized that that's not the end of the story, yeah? Not the end of the situation, yeah? What to do? It was kind of personal challenge to me. And because I like challenges, I took it. Did I answer your question? Yes? No? Partially, okay.
Who was a product owner in this project? I mean, did you decide what was going to do first, or maybe client?
Yeah, very good question. There were no freelancers at the client side to take this responsibility. They said, no. It doesn't suit my, imagination about how we conduct the project. Yes, I could be a project manager, but I said, we don't need project managers anymore. Probably you have too much of them, yeah? And later, one of the project managers in the project from the client, not from us, yeah, was called, or I forced him slightly to be a product owner, not saying he's the product owner. But, the responsibility area he does at the end of the project, as I was quitting, it was 90% of the product owner. Sorry. Was one of the challenges, tasks to do so. Not doing, fixing, the technical stuff, fuck, it's not working, blah, blah, blah. But, to impress the other people, especially from the client side, that they should do something because it will be good for the project, and maybe they will leave their comfort zone. So they, play a little bit with their responsibilities and so on. And they were aware that I could try, force them or to inject with agile methodology. No, they were agile resist already, yeah? Not so easy. Thank you too. Maybe I should leave that.